Dr. Suchi, a couple of folks have asked me why India and why invest India in particular, because there's a lot of government entities. Just kind of give me feedback as to what you would want investors to know in terms of, the relationship that we've been building and why it's an appropriate thing for US allocators looking to understand the safety investing aside and an organization like Invest India.
So I want to tell you that Invest India is an organization under Ministry of Commerce. We work directly with the central government in India. We are one of the bodies which are actually being created by or structured by the government for the facilitation of ease of doing business for the investors. We believe categorically that our own mandate, which has been given, is not just to get FDI but also to bring comfort and trust of the investors into our country. So we not just facilitate an investor, but we also help them do a lot of research work, a lot of understanding about how the India ecosystem is changing for hospitality and tourism. We help them not just get land because we are not just the property dealers, but we also bring a lot of competency on board, which is very, very critical for an investor to understand and create that, have that trust in our people. We give you a feasibility analysis, we give you a cost competitive edge, we give you an understanding of, factors of production for for your own self. And then we also help you channelize your investments not just into, so we have 28 states in India. We channelize those investments into various states as well, and we help each office communicate with you, give you that assurance that the government is with you, and we are partners.
So I'm curious on the like on an international level, a lot of the investors that I've spoken to, when I tell them like, hey, look, the majority of the demand is local tourism that's happening. There's only 9 million international travelers coming a year. Even though there's such a large demand, domestically, there's sort of this, I don't want to say aversion, but like odd response when you speak to the international tourism that's happening. Although, my argument has always been from a portfolio standpoint, it's really attractive that the country's not depending on, Chinese tourists or international tourists in any sort of material way. But, what are some key trends that you're seeing at the international stage?
That's a very interesting thing that you've asked. So frankly, if you talk about numbers and the growth pattern and the consumption pattern, I would go step by step how you've asked. I think the first thing that you're asking me, demand in terms of understanding the international consumers, what are they asking for? I think we are increasingly looking at hotel properties which are increasingly in demand by the international consumers. They're looking forward to come to India, invest in these kind of properties, have a collaboration with the operators, understanding of the trustworthy ecosystem that we have right now. The growth in consumption has been offering for some time in terms of the second point that you asked. From 2000 to 2015 to now, the market for FMCG in India is growing by 2.5x. Spending is estimated by 4 trillion by 2030, which is 48% into luxury goods. That is the kind of statistics that we have. And residential sector, while you're asking about everything, I'm giving you a little more data, saw a sale of $56.25 billion. Again, this marked as a first ever volume of units as well as units sold in the market. So first, we see a lot of demand from international buyers who are willing to come and invest, not just from US, but from Australia, New Zealand, and we see a lot of traction from UAE, Saudi as well. Then when you talk of consumption, I've given you numbers. When you talk of youth, I think we have the highest number of youth in the country who are spending and doing that expenditure. When you're looking at international market, we are actually moving ahead of any of the countries. I would also like to tell you, because we see a lot of traction in Australia and Singapore, that our Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, has just started an office in Singapore for only specific sectors. And now we are also looking at that there is a trip that is happening from one of the senior ministers of the country, and they say, okay, for Australia, let's talk about only tourism. So that is the kind of demand that we are looking at, that our senior officials of the country are taking specific interest into this sector.
Our perspective has been we want to deploy about 112 million to India as an allocation across at least 8 of these partnerships that we've come across that are basically at the finish line in terms of what would the deal structure look like. And those 8 partners currently, you know, have market share of 80% of the current branded rooms. So, you know, that 112 would represent about 82,000 keys that these operators already have in stock. And as I've spoke to investors, I've tried to explain we could also go buy a hotel in LA, and one hotel would be $112 million, a 100-room hotel. You know, the average key in you know, like a luxury hotel in LA would like even mid-market in LA would be 750 to $1 million a key. And from a risk profile, I've felt that investors should find it very compelling to be able to uh, allocate the same amount of money and have exposure to 82,000 currently operating keys across all these demographics, all these hotel tiers with the best in class operators. And I've also tried to explain how what we're doing is different than what a lot of the other investors in the hospitality space in India are doing, right? If you look at some of the larger players in the space, the Brookfields and the you know, like Goldman Sachs and all these other guys who've allocated there, they're coming in and they're doing joint ventures, kind of, but they're buying the whole sort of asset. You know, it's the traditional model of we're going to own the real estate, you're going to operate the real estate, versus our approach has been we're going to partner with the operators and we're going to have minority exposure to these assets. Why do you think that that has been so well received by operators, and how would you sort of express to investors why that's likely a better strategy based on some of these other like large acquisitions that you've seen of hotel assets for foreigners who've come in who don't really know the region as well as the local operator?
Yeah. So I completely get your point. I hear you on that. My only submission in this is there are a couple of operators who are doing really well in the segment. So on an average, in India, if you see the average CAGR for a hospitality player would be somewhere around 10% or so. But there are a couple of players who are, because of the experiences that they are creating, the cultural heritage that they are kind of supporting and promoting, the kind of footfall they get is more than 70% of the occupancy rate that I'm talking about is around 70% or more at any time of the year. And which is why, compared to other hospitality players, their returns may be a little better in terms of the revenue. And also, their average room rent is a little better compared to other players in the market. So now, when it comes to partnering with the operators, I feel there is a huge chance of getting better returns in that segment if you're looking for a longer period of time, because they are growing currently, not as big a brand as Leela for that matter, but not very small in the segment also. They are growing heavily, expanding heavily. So which is why I feel it would be good to partner with such brands like Ambuja, Neotia, for that matter.
What makes a partnership with me and with Bay Street valuable to Invest India? A couple of folks have said, well, why would that organization want to work with you, or why would they make these introductions and facilitate introductions to operators? So what are the key, outcomes that you're focused on achieving together with investors, and how do you see the collaboration driving impact or unlocking new opportunities for India's growth?
When I say we work as partners, we also believe in a win-win. I want to really tell you this, that, when my team reached out to you and when you reached out to them, it's a kind of relationship that we build on of trust and of compatibility and of, kind of believing in each other. It's not only about Bay Street or it's not about Invest India. It's also about reliability for the country. When you spoke to us, when you talked to us, we started understanding and we actually did a lot of reference checks for you. And we also started looking at your profile with complete detailing. And I'm very happy and I'm very, very proud to say that we found a good investor in you. We found a good person in terms of who's committing and who's also believing in the India story, who's not trying to, change any kind of facts with us. And your truthfulness, your detailing, your understanding, your commitment to time, to various other aspects have made us believe in you. One is believing in you. Second is, what is it that you are also getting on table for us? So tourism as a sector also is a very job oriented sector for the country, or hospitality. While when you invest, you bring us employment for the country. You bring us a lot of jobs for the people we are in. You bring, prosperity for the state wherein you invest in. That's a win for India. What is a win for Bay Street as a capital? We give you the understanding of the best of operators here, and we give you an understanding of the reliable resources over here. So that's the partnership that we believe in, and that's the partnership we say ease of doing business in the country. That is what we say, and that's a win-win for both the parties here.
Tourism in India is obviously a lucrative opportunity for those who know how to navigate, and you sort of touched on, from 2005, 2006 to 2020 or so, like the GDP tripled. But more than that, the demand for rooms is already expected to double. Can you speak to the supply side and like this super cycle that we're in of like just the lack of supply and the need for new, hotel room stock, and how long you project that would last?
So, we are currently sitting at about 160 to 170,000 branded rooms in total, business, leisure, all combined, right? US, for example, has 5 million, if I'm not wrong, give or take, or upwards of that. So just see the scale difference, right? And then what is happening in India is over the last 1 year and more, what we've been seeing is 70% occupancy on an aggregate level. Marquee properties have had days where they're overbooked, right? So this is an absolutely unprecedented moment, and it's not being just the revenge travel, because revenge travel has pettered out in places, in places which are originally touristy. You are seeing people say we do not want tourists anymore, and that's not something you'll see in India. In India, let me tell you, we've made tourism such a central tenet to every state economy. Invest India is working with state governments to radically reduce the electricity charges for hotels. There is weddings. Indian weddings are they are sui generis, right? They are unlike any other weddings. We do not wed on the beaches. We book hotels, right? We book hotels, and we have a family which is the size of a normal infantry. So we get the entire army of families lodged. So, and I'm not kidding, like, a lot of hotels have started creating specific banquet spaces to host wedding ceremonies. So when you talk about the local factor, right, these are huge, huge developments, right? So when you just try and think about it, around 200 odd thousand, 210 odd thousand rooms by 2027 and 2028. But the way our economy is shaping up, that is not going to be enough. If you run the calculation right now, we need somewhere around 450,000 rooms. Right? That is nearly 3x what we currently have. And we will need a capex of upward of $30 odd billion. Right now, the foreign institutional money which is coming into India is pretty low. Now, we have to really think about it. When we introduce you to people, we introduce you to people who have a long history. And like you understood, right? Like the brand name is a very touchy thing in India. People are very sensitive about how their brand is perceived. So, for example, the brand we are working with in all of Eastern India, they are one of the most well-known business families. So,
right.
for them, ensuring that their brand comes at the top, it is a key essential, right? And
Mhm.
these people are, and we worked to their strategy, right? How they decided to just concentrate on the places they have command over.
Right.
So India is also seeing that the pie is so huge. You can stay in just one part of India and really do good profits. So if you
Mhm.
try and systematically look at things in India, I think in the tourism space, with just the lack of inventory that we have, a consistent uptick in demand